Hello everyone, it's Alexander here. And in this video today, I thought it would be an interesting time and fun to share with you guys the moments in my artistic journey where I started to grow and make leaps with my art. See, the thing is, it wasn't that clear to me. It wasn't that obvious when that stuff started to happen. I sort of realized it later in life when I would look back and reflect. And that's sort of what I'm doing right now. In this video is I'll be looking back and reflecting with you guys. I kind of need to start with my school experience. I started learning how to draw and how to paint when I was quite young, around 14 years old. I started learning at this amazing school in Sherman Oaks called Associates in Art, and it was run by Mark Westermo. And there were so many amazing instructors there that also were working in the industry, in the entertainment industry at the time, and some of them are still around and are still working. Some of them have gone in different ways and are doing gallery work. That's beside the point. And I just remember going to figure drawing classes one after another. It was every weekend because at the time I was going through school. And I remember that I was only practicing when I would go to my classes. I actually didn't practice that much when I would go home. There was no homework. And if there was homework, it was a suggestion. It was advice given by the instructor. This is on us. This is our responsibility. We have to develop this discipline if we want to get good at this. Being that I was 14 at the time, of course I don't want to hide behind my age. I was also interested in different things, hanging out with my friends and playing video games and being outside, being on our bikes. And in my head, I would think of having to practice and to draw as I need to stay home and sort of keep myself in there and practice for a full day. That's how I saw it. That's how I understood discipline. And there was a immature part of me that just didn't want to follow through with that. I saw it as hard work, and in all reality, it is hard work, but it's not as evil as I would think about it when I was young. I'm telling you this because this type of lack of discipline carried with me for a while. And I think it carried with me up to high school. And in high school, I started to realize the power behind it. And I truly actually started to absorb all the knowledge behind figure drawing and painting when I was midway through high school. And that's when I was still going to associates then, not so often, but still every once in a while I would take classes. And that's when I met other instructors I started to branch out from Mark Westermo's class, and it sort of also opened my mind even more. They were able to, these other instructors were able to break down what I've been trying to learn in different ways, and I started to appreciate even more so the gold and the complexity of what Mark was teaching us. I know that this sounds like it's about Mark Westermo right now, but it just so happens to be the timeline of events that leads up to what I'm trying to get to here. So when I was going through high school, I met Paul Wee, and Paul Wee sort of broke my mind and rebuilt it. He taught me to let go of the idea of drawings being precious and trying to be perfect with my marks, and really loosening up and freeing myself. He used the analogy of Bruce Lee talking about water and adapting, and Morpheus showing Neo the door, and Neo has to walk through it. It was very inspirational, very motivational on getting back up on my feet, because at the time I probably didn't know it, but I really wasn't taking myself seriously. So I started to do that, and this picked up for me, and it went like that through college, and I went to Art Center College of Design, and I got into that school because of the power that was instilled in me from Paul Wee's teachings. I'd like to think so. I really do believe that. He definitely sort of kicked me into high gear, and I turned myself around from being foggy and sort of blinded, and not seeing how irresponsible I was being with my time. And he really turned that around. And because of that, I made a strong enough portfolio to get accepted at Art Center at the time. So I went through Art Center, 4 years there, and also met amazing teachers, and learned how to paint really from those teachers at Art Center. And when I left, I was, just to be more concise with this point of the story, I was under the impression that just because I'm leaving Art Center, I should now be more qualified now to have a job. And it wasn't like that. And I was probably not the only person to think like that, but it was a very a clueless way to go about it. So graduating Art Center and thinking that I'm entitled to a job now really sort of put things in this sobering perspective of, yes, you really have to put the work in for it. This isn't easy peasy. If it was, anybody would probably be able to do it. And it's the first time in that moment I took a look at my work. In a way, I took a look at myself. I feel like I had realized that the entire time I was sort of going on and on with this automatic type of way through my art studying and growing, and I wasn't truly seeing things with a clear mind. So when I first started working, my very first job in the entertainment industry, it was for a video game. But afterwards, I believe when I've truly started to apply myself was when I started to work for film. It's a whole other story to dive into how I climbed the ladder, really. But in terms of where I realized change in my work and growth is when I started working in film. It's when I started to pick apart my actual potential and my strengths and weaknesses. When I was working at Aaron Sims, that's exactly when this began. I started to see a whole different side of things and new caliber of work emerging from this industry that was blowing my mind completely. And it was humbling me because I already thought I had reached a height unreachable, and I was proven wrong immediately. And I was lucky and very fortunate to have been working in this industry already because of amazing artists and, more importantly, really good friends that helped me out. I guess what I'm trying to say is the beginning of this struggle comes from ego. It comes from blinding yourself. Because of that, it's difficult to see your actual worth. There was a point in my life where I felt pretty hopeless and lost in terms of what I was supposed to do with my art. And that started to change when I realized my strength lies in film and storytelling. I mean, this goes back to my high school days when a group of friends and I would get together and we'd make short movies using a Hi8 camera, and that's it. And then we would actually edit the movie sequentially through the camera as we were shooting. So, I mean, it just starts from a point like that. It even starts earlier, but I won't get into any of that. I'm just relating it to the fact that when I started to look at my work as a piece of a moment from a movie, as if I paused a frame that belonged in a movie. That's how I started to imagine my work. This is when I started to apply my thought process. I started to think about what I was doing. Because for a while I was only trying to emulate or mimic what I was seeing coming out of other artists. And I didn't understand it. I might have been seeing exactly what I needed to. I just didn't understand the value in it. I didn't appreciate what they were doing. I think mimicking other artists is good in terms of practice and gaining your mileage and understanding the technical aspects of how things get executed. But if you need to find yourself in your work, if you need to discover what your strengths are, you really have to dig deep. You really have to reflect. You have to be brutally honest with yourself and ask, what is it in this medium, with these tools that I have, what is it that I would love to absolutely express any given day and in any given moment? What is it that I would passionately love to share with other people, other artists, friends, the world, really? With the internet, you're sharing it to the world. So my influences came from watching film, and my film influences came from recommendations that were given to me by really good friends, and that is very precious to me. I think knowing the people and surrounding the people you're with is important in your life. Being with the right crowd, as people say, is important. One of my very first influences for my art, the filmmaker that started to push my art into the direction that I, to this very day, have been only going deeper into and evolving, was director Michael Haneke. And from there it sort of spiraled outwards into familiarizing myself with Stanley Kubrick again, and Lars von Trier again, and discovering Gaspar Noé again, and Andrei Tarkovsky, and so many other filmmakers that had already made masterpieces after masterpieces in cinema. Of course, there's Spielberg and Martin Scorsese and Terry Gilliam, Terrence Malick, and the reason why I'm bringing these up is because they evoked such powerful emotion through their work, and I always wanted to be like them. I wanted to make movies. And I feel like I found a way to project a movie in my mind through a painting. And I thought of it, if I can project this movie in my mind through a single still image that I painted, then maybe it will work the same for the person, somebody else that's viewing it, the audience. So that's what really started to drive my work forward, I believe. I started to make drastic changes. I started to pay attention to things not because I needed to, because it was a part of a by the book process to get better, or it's because I found a love for it. It's because I found a passion, and it was like discovering a secret key to a room you never knew existed. On that note, it was also David Lynch that heavily inspired me, because he himself, like many other filmmakers, is a painter and a musician. He creates music, and I create music. And he thinks on a whole different wavelength, dream logic, and how he makes his film is completely different from how many other people make their movies. Same with Akira Kurosawa. I started to look at old work that I had done, and I was starting to analyze, how do I transform this into who I am now? How do I take this personality of this painting that I did, coming out of art center? What was the point of this? Was I just trying to make beautiful imagery? What am I trying to say with this? Shouldn't I rather take it and inject story and something that can grab the viewer, be something that could be evocative, something that could stay in somebody's mind after seeing it? And I started to experiment with the context of the paintings that I was doing, and I started to reflect off of the movies that I've seen and what stayed with me, what influenced me. And those were the beginning steps of my growth, really. Funny Games being one of those movies that really stayed with me. Same with Clockwork Orange or The Shining. Gaspar Noé's Irreversible. It was a shockingly disturbing film that stayed with me as well. There's many I could list. But what I started to realize, and this actually came, it clicked to me because it came from a talk Craig Mullins had given at Art Center. And at the time it was just as impactful. The only thing is it sort of got buried underneath the academic route that we were all under at Art Center. Craig Mullins said to us, paint from the world that you live in. Paint what's around you. Paint or draw and pull from life. It will make your work more interesting. I mean, he said it in a far more eloquent and powerful way than what I just said, but it clicked to me in that very moment. And yes, I have been pulling from films that really influenced me, and it wasn't the most predictable thing I would be pulling from. It might have been the type of lighting that was hitting a character at this particular shot, or the film grain that was fizzing through the credits of this film, or the sound of the score through this film. And like John Carpenter, for example, his early work has this amazing vintage-like quality that adds to the tone of his horror films. So I would use that feeling, and I would pull the visual aspect out of it. And I also started to be inspired musically from his works as well. So I started to ask myself, well, why don't I pull from life? If I was to make my own movie, what would I make it about? Would I emulate what's already been made? Or would I tell a story that I've experienced as a child, or dreams that I've had? So this is when that turning point started to turn. This is when the cogwheels in my brain started to function. Finally, things started to make deep sense. Things started to connect on a level I didn't expect. And my work started to grow when I found all these similarities crossing over and bonding. I got so deeply immersed in my work. I know there were days where I didn't even sleep. I was painting and creating pieces and painting and making music and painting and painting. At the time, I wasn't really employed. I had just finished working at Aaron Sims, and I had an amazing experience learning working there with the team and Aaron himself, and looking at my work that came out of it, I wasn't satisfied. It's also what pushed me forward, is this dissatisfaction of what have I been doing all this time? Will this land me new work? Will this get me further? And should it be that motivates me? Should it be, how do I get my next job? Is this what will drive me forever? It doesn't seem as exciting if that's what it's based on. So it wasn't necessarily that thought alone that made me change in my work, but I realized it in the process of doing so, that wow, if I hadn't stopped to think about this stuff, I wouldn't have realized that that's where I was headed. Knowing yourself and knowing your own work, discovering yourself in your journey, is freedom as an artist. You are completely free and independent of any machine or industry. You create your emotions on the canvas. Even in theory, if you had a doppelganger, it wouldn't be the same, because you have your own life to pull from, and the way you perceived life, the way you perceived music and film, even video games. I think that's the most important part about this little rant here, is that my inspirations and my improvements, my growth, came from learning to know yourself. And filmmakers like Michael Haneke are much like instructors like Mark Westermo or Paul Wee, who taught me to open my mind. But really what they showed me is how to go about this journey on my own. It's just that at that time, I didn't know what I was looking at. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you want to see more like this, please leave your comments and suggestions down below. And remember to subscribe. Thank you very much.